conversation. Our people talking to our people and talking to the world about things that matter to us. We believed and we reflected in our presence the thought that Black lives matter, Black ideas matter, Black agendas matter. So we want to carry that spirit forward today. We invite you to be a part of this conversation. We want to grow it. We're going to do this every Monday, hopefully starting at around 10 today, a little bit later than that, but around the 10 o'clock hour. And we want you to be a partner, a participant, a beneficiary of the power of conversation between our people. So we're pleased today to connect with people who are leaders in serving our community. Alicia Smith is the executive director of Corcoran neighborhood in South Minneapolis. And we have Carlotta on board. Carlotta is with the Hennepin County. Carlotta, let me get your full information here just a second. I just changed it from my I'm using this technology and it's very, very cool. Carlotta Madison is the eligibility stability supervisor at Hennepin County. And one of her colleagues will be joining us shortly. His name is Eduardo Parra. He is the human services supervisor. Co-piloting with me today is my colleague and friend, Harry Colbert Jr., the managing editor of Insight News, will be announcing his move to an arena of greater responsibility in the course of this program with congratulations and respect to him. But let me begin by throwing it to you, Harry. Good morning. And we've often started these with sort of an update on what the numbers are right now in terms of our community and COVID-19. So why don't you start with that?
Okay, good morning again. And unfortunately, but not unexpected, the numbers continue to rise in all areas of concern. In the state of Minnesota, there to date, and I think the new numbers will come in about an hour. But right now, what we're seeing is 6,663 confirmed cases. Of that, we've lost 419 Minnesotans to the deadly coronavirus, COVID-19. 3,015 people have been released from isolation. So that means they have tested positive and now are no longer testing positive for COVID-19. In Hennepin County, the hotspot in the state, 2,151 cases. Right next door in Ramsey, there are 493 cases. The second hotspot is down in the southwestern corridor where we have the meat processing facility, and they're in Worthington. They have 940 confirmed cases. And once again, these are confirmed cases, and quite possibly and most probably there are far more cases. In the breakdown of ethnicity, so far, 15% of the confirmed cases have been African American, and that's 1,007 people. So that's 15%. And still, the other number that jumps out at me is the unknown number, and that's 28%. So there are 1,851 people who, for whatever reason, and I don't know the reasoning behind this, we don't have the ethnicity of those confirmed cases. And we're still waiting on the breakdown on ethnicity when it comes to the deceased.
Okay, great. Thanks for the update, Harry. So, at the end of the day, our mission is to try to present information in a way that encourages people to simply pay attention, to be aware. We want to promote calm, not anxiety. We believe that among us and between us, we have an obligation and an opportunity to approach creating awareness and accountability and responsibility so that individuals can embrace their own particular response in ways that reflect best practices, that show that you are respecting the power of this tragedy of the virus, but you also respect your relationship with your neighbors and your family, that as well as trying to keep yourself nourished and fit and moving, you also ensure that your activity, your movement in community does not imperil other people. And so let me go first to Alicia over at the Corcoran neighborhood. Alicia Smith, how you doing, first of all, and good morning and welcome.
Good morning, and I'm well. I'm well. How are you?
I'm doing well. And so we always want to talk about what happens in community and how does a storied organization like the Corcoran neighborhood mobilize its people on the ground to make sure that house by house or neighbor by neighbor, people get the information they need and get access to the resources they need in a time such as this.
Well, we do it sort of in a myriad of ways. We use technology like the platform that we find ourselves on today. And then we do some basic human outreach, knocking on doors, stepping back, waiting for a neighbor to answer. And we rely on a lot of landline conversations with some of our seniors in the neighborhood, as well as putting our feet on the ground and just walking around and ensuring that some of our neighbors who maybe are a little more high needs are checked on and feel comfortable and that they understand what's going on. And so, you know, we've used a variety of those options. By far, the most impactful one has been knocking on neighbors' doors, which has been up until about a couple of weeks ago, a one-woman show, which was myself. I've since then enlisted some volunteers, and we sort of have a team of folks just walking around, checking in on neighbors and ensuring that all of the folks in Corcoran are okay. And if they are not, and if they have needs, then if we can't provide the need, then we go and we connect them with someone who can.
Give us an idea of the geography of the Corcoran neighborhood and take a minute to give people Corcoran 101. Describe your community and what makes it the unique and wonderful place that it is.
Yeah, so Corcoran 101, for folks who are maybe less familiar with how these neighborhoods are divided, Corcoran runs from Lake and Cedar Avenue up to 36, over to Hiawatha, and then back up to Lake, sort of like a weird little square pulled out a little bit. And the demographics in the Corcoran neighborhood, we are about 40% white, 30% Spanish-speaking population, and then a 5% of African-American and some other in there. And so a pretty diverse neighborhood right on the transit line, one of the most frequented stops in a pretty, what I would like to say, a pretty little tucked away gym in the city living life. And so pretty great neighborhood, a lot of single family homes. We have approximately 38 multi-units apartments that are either 8-plex or more units in our neighborhood. And so lots of families in the Corcoran neighborhood.
What have been the traditional issues that the Corcoran Neighborhood Association has identified and focused on? This was all prior to COVID-19.
Yeah.
Just give an idea of what your work expectations had been when you set them out last year. I know the whole world has changed in the past 2 months, but give people some background again on neighborhood vision and priorities.
So prior to this pandemic and reactionary time that we are living in right now, Corcoran, some of the things that we focused on, one was community building and reaching out to neighbors who were not the traditional folks that neighborhood organizations reach. If you know anything about Minneapolis and neighborhood organizations, you know we've had a long kind of tumultuous history with being predominantly white organizations, homeowners. And so in the last few years, especially in my time here, we have focused on reaching every neighbor in our neighborhood, whether you own, whether you rent, whether you're Black, white, Native, Spanish-speaking families, or Somali brother or sister. And so really reaching out to folks to draw in community, to build actual community so that neighbors know one another. We live in this time where we're just sort of going and going and going to work and going to school, taking our kids to events. And we're not necessarily taking time to get to know our neighbors because we weren't spending a lot of time at home. Well, of course, unforeseen circumstances like COVID-19 has allowed time for folks to build and make relationships stronger, not only inside of their home, but maybe get to know their neighbors and have some conversation across the fence or across the grass or across the hallway from one another. And so we've worked on a variety of things, everything from issues with land use and housing, issues with our farmers market. We run and operate a farmers market, which we've operated for almost the last 20 years here in the Corcoran neighborhood. Everything from traffic control and safety to small businesses resources and connecting neighbors with opportunities for housing. And so those were just some of the things that we were working on prior to this COVID-19 pandemic. And so now we're still going to keep some of that focus, but we've also shifted our focus dramatically as we have seen the impacts and the implications of what COVID has done to our community, and folks who found themselves maybe underemployed temporarily or working from home or now having to care for their children full time and not necessarily having an alternative to where would they send their kids if they are called back to work. And so how do we continue to ensure that our neighbors are thriving mentally, physically, and emotionally? And so offering some services and connecting with professionals who have those skill sets that we just maybe don't have on our small team. And so we acknowledge that we can't solve all the problems, but as a community, we can rally together and use the resources around us.
That's a perfect segue, I think, and thank you so much, Alicia Smith, for setting the table here for this conversation, because I want to pivot now to Carlotta Madison. And Carlotta Madison is the Eligibility Stability Supervisor for Hennepin County. Carlotta, thank you for being with us today. And wonderful to hear this array of neighborhood priorities presented by Alicia. And what we know is that set of priorities really is reflected throughout Twin Cities, throughout Hennepin County, because we have, I think, maybe in Minneapolis, at least around, 60 or so neighborhoods that are part of the NRP network, and there might be other configurations as well. But from the county's point of view, Carlotta, what can you do? How do you respond to the need for stability in communities?
Well, right now, are we talking before COVID or?
Let's do both.
During this time?
Let's say if the COVID issue wasn't present, what would be the general working strategy? And in doing so, the vision of the organization. And then we'll talk about what's been changed because of the stress that COVID-19 brings.
Okay. One of the things that Hennepin County has done is we've gone back into the communities. We've set service centers all over Minneapolis, or all over Hennepin County, actually. One of the first service centers to go out was in the Northwest Service Center out in Brooklyn Park, Brooklyn Center area. So we've been trying to be more present in the community and trying to develop more strategies to make it easier for people to apply for the services they need, just to help with basic needs in general. So we've been trying to work on getting our programs to be easier to apply for, trying to work on, the technology, making it so clients don't have to come into the office. So we had started that before COVID hit.
So right now you mentioned the one in Brooklyn Center, Northwest Brooklyn Park area, but you also have a new facility on Plymouth Avenue in North Minneapolis.
North Minneapolis, we
list them all, or the ones that come to mind anyway, so people have an idea.
Okay. Yeah, we have a facility in North Minneapolis that's convenient, has free parking. We found that our downtown location was cumbersome for people with the parking. But we do have a facility downtown, a service center at HSB, the Health Services Building, that's kitty corner from HCMC. And then we have another one in Bloomington, South Suburban Office. So we've been just trying to get out into the community and make it easier for people to apply for the services that they need.
Generally, what are the range of services that the county provides for the residents?
Well, we have the SNAP, which is the food support, general assistance, emergency general assistance, medical assistance. We've been trying to make all those programs easier and more accessible to people in the community.
Okay, and then here comes COVID-19 all of a sudden, and everybody's world is turned upside down. What happened? How does the county respond to support the residents of the county, organizations like Corcoran and like Northside Residents, et cetera? What happens?
Mm-hmm. Well, we had to close our face-to-face operations. And so we started relying solely on online applications. Also, one of the major things that happened is the state of Minnesota, DHS, waived a lot of the requirements that were necessary in order for people to get the basic needs met. So if you're applying now, you can apply online. And now the physical signature is being waived by the state. So you can actually call into a county service center and they will take your application over the phone and you can do a verbal signature, which is really nice. It's been really nice because a lot of the documents that we required in the past, we're waiving a lot of stuff just to get the assistance and help to people.
Let me take a note to Kelvin. Kelvin Curry is hosting. Kelvin, I got the notes that we're getting put on hold. Eduardo Para is trying to join us and see if you
I'm here.
Eduardo, you there?
I'm here. Yes, I'm sorry.
Okay, great.
Technical
No,
difficulties here.
We don't have video of you. You must be just calling in. Did you try to get? Are you at your computer?
Yeah, let me see if I can get video here.
Yeah, sure.
Just a sec here.
Okay.
I'm new with this program here. I'm sorry.
No problem. No, thank you for joining us. And so while you're getting organized,
there we are.
A lot of, so it's really amazing. You're saying that sort of one of the byproducts of this pressure that COVID-19 is sort of a reevaluation of the ways we can connect. And that's going to end up improving the system beyond COVID-19, it sounds like to me. I raised the question of there had been a general kind of, what's the right word? Sometimes a stigma attached to poor people and people of color who used county services, particularly in history. We had derogatory things to say about people on welfare, right? Things like welfare moms and welfare cheats, all that language was really abroad in the culture. And what's happening now is that COVID-19 shows that anybody and everybody is vulnerable and that all of us, the entire country, the entire world, the economic system that gave us whatever advantages we had is really under siege. And we all have to admit that we are equally vulnerable at one level or another. And I think it's tending to encourage us to reevaluate the sort of persnicketiness, that's the word I just made up, that we might have had in looking sort of down our noses at other people, because as the saying goes, but by the grace of God, there go I, right? We all are in this together. And so I'm just sort of reflecting on what it means. But Harry, jump in here. You and I talk generally about stuff. And how does that sound to you, Harry? Am I on in my thinking or not?
You're 100% on. And I think, pardon me, my allergies are bothering me, but I think one of the other things is it draws the curtain on the, and I hate to use this word like this, but I'm going to do it. It draws the curtain on the illusion of the American dream. And when I say the illusion of the American dream is that's being sold, that's being packaged to the broader community, isn't this dream of just being able to live a comfortable life with a picket fence. It's this dream, it's an aspirational dream of being able to not have to have the day-to-day worries, economic worries that you see. What we're finding out is the people who identify with the ultra rich really are finding out now they have way more in common with the disadvantaged. It's really a two paycheck away from calamity type situation. And I think that's being exposed, and it doesn't matter if you're in a quote unquote red state or a blue state, or if you are in America right now, COVID-19 is showing that we're all vulnerable to it. And once again, now that's bringing about the debate of, well, we need to open up the economy, this, that, and the other. People are realizing that they can't sustain, and so they're choosing death over death in many ways. Yeah. Do I die from the virus or do I die from starvation?
Great. And I see we've got Eduardo Parra. Good morning. How are you, Eduardo?
Good morning, friends. Thank you for being patient with me.
Well, thank you for
all this conversation of working remotely and technology can really cause us headaches. You know, it really has profound impacts if you're not able to connect, don't have the resources, don't have the means.
That says a lot right there. I mean, so
with our isolation, you know, it's then we're really in a pickle, and we're not as advanced in some ways as I think we are.
We're finding a lot of students are having that issue in terms of distance learning because they don't have access to the equipment that they need to fulfill their school obligations.
Or to high-speed internet, you know, maybe to Wi-Fi. It's not available where they are, you know, so it makes it difficult. And so that disadvantage that they already are operating from is simply exacerbated because they are not on the same page as everybody else in terms of access to the technology that's needed to operate.
Yeah.
Jump in. So this is an open forum. So Alicia, jump in if you have a thought. Carlotta, jump in whenever you want to. While we're doing that, Eduardo, let me introduce you again.
Sure.
You're the Human Services Supervisor for Hennepin County. What does it mean? What's your mission? What's your work? And what do we want to leave our viewers and listeners with about how they can engage, utilize the services that you and the county provide to the residents of Hennepin County?
Certainly. So I supervise the AZ Info Contact Center. So we're the county's main phones line of operators where the public can call in for public assistance, benefits, etc. Right now, we've expanded our general information county line 348-3000, 612-348-3000 from 8 a.m. to 8 p.m. 7 days a week. And so the focus there is to provide some sort of a response to meeting the public's essential needs: groceries, clothing, medications, medical equipment, cleaning supplies. And then we're also responding to the ongoing public to ensure that their benefits stay renewed. For example, for SNAP. Am I eligible? I'm getting calls from
SNAP
folks.
Is what? SNAP is what?
SNAP is Supplemental Nutrition Assistance Program, also known as food stamps back in the day. And so what we're trying to do is, I'm a part of a group that is onboarding this resource guide that we're working on right now. As a matter of fact, feverishly, we're going to be, it's growing by the minute, but it's the county's main COVID-19 page. There's a link to resources. My team is looking specifically at all of our contracts that we have with the county and our business partners, loosely termed partners, our friends in the community that we interact with. How can we focus our efforts to ensure that we're reaching disproportionately impacted communities, specifically African Americans, the African diaspora, Spanish-speaking folks, the Asian community? And so we've got connections with all of those mainline organizations, and we're We're reviewing the websites to make sure that our content is consistent with what they say and is also consistent with our mission, which is really addressing disparities. This whole focus of disparities work does not go away.
Mhm.
And right now it's critical, I think, that we continue to really provide a razor sharp focus and making sure that we're reaching out to those folks who just don't have the means for an internet connection. Students, what are we going to do for meals if parents are called back to work? How are we going to address that? And so the line that I'm a part of, this resource line, people can call in and check in with about any issue. We'll try to help. We get calls for the state. We get calls for the federal stimulus checks. We get calls for driver's licenses, but primarily it's people calling saying, I need help. I can't pay my rent. And of course, the county has appropriated over $700,000 in funding specific to suburban county residents. That's a pocket of folks that we sometimes overlook, perhaps.
Mhm.
Poverty exists in a lot of places. And so that's an additional pot of money separate from the emergency rental assistance that is federally funded ongoing program for services. Trying to focus, trying to tailor, trying to make sure we've got resources that meet client need, food, types of food, information in different languages, and also making sure that we're working extra diligently to really bring folks in who really were on the edge before, and now they're just on the precipice, and we're hearing about it. We've received over, I'd say, about 2,000 calls approximately. Some an uptick in mental health calls for requests for assistance with the Domestic Abuse Service Center, and on and on and on. And so court, and people are still being born, birth certificates, marriage certificates, all the routine stuff on top of everything else. And there still are people who still don't know about what we do and what we can provide. And we're also open to anybody, regardless of your immigration status, as well. And so it's a conversation. It's a conversation with us, and then we will refer you to a navigator or a social worker, depending on the need.
Mm-hmm. Super. I'm Al McFarlane. This is Conversations with Al McFarlane. This is our Monday morning leadership meeting. We're calling it the Monday Morning Public Policy Forum. Every Monday, 10 o'clock. We hope that you'll be with us every Monday. Let people know. Like this conversation if you're watching on social media, share it and invite your friends to be part of it. We'd like you to also give us comments. Comment to my Facebook page, Facebook Al McFarlane. Also, you can comment to Facebook Insight News, but create a watch party. Let's grow this conversation and make it a place where people can rely on for sharpening of ideas, of opportunities, and in a way that respects our culture, our identity, our humanity. That's what we do here. So I want to thank everybody for being on this call. Special thanks to Al Flowers at Underground Strategies, who's live streaming this, doing a watch party. I invite you, if you're monitoring this program, to start a watch party as well. Let's get as many people as we can tuned in, supportive of this conversation. Eduardo, before you joined us, I was talking about the change in the atmosphere. And I'm remembering and reflecting on this notion of stigma that a generation ago was associated with poverty, with having to be on welfare, with having to get food stamps, having to get county assistance. And so while those services were critical, necessary, important, and valued, there was also a price and dignity that individuals had to pay, real or not, but that feeling was there. And the feeling was expressed often in public, if not condemnation, public side glances at the people who were recipients of public support, right? So everything has changed now because we know that COVID-19 is no respecter of position, power, race, color, even though it's having an amplified impact on the poor because of the other conditions of our community. So would you speak, would all of my panel speak to this question of how we reassess who we are to each other and for each other, and how we sort of redefine the relationship of government, right, of business to our people, to ordinary people in neighborhoods who are at different levels of both opportunity and need, but could be in either place or both places at the same time. It's a long question, but you get the drift. So Eduardo, let me start with you.
Sure.
And Carlotta respond and jump in as well, Alicia and Harry.
Well, so this work is not just professional, it's personal.
Yes.
I live in and now work full time in the North Minneapolis part of the city, and it's incumbent on us to really focus and think about, for example, as we start up this new telephone service, as we create this new resource guide, we have to make sure that it's reaching those people who just are on the fringe. Is it in English only? Why is that? Challenging those assumptions. Is it written in a way that the average person with probably a 4th grade literacy level or 5th grade can understand, right? We get pretty high English at times, and we need to bring it down to a certain level. And so this system has marginalized folks. Unfortunately, there will be continue to be, but in our group, we really have brought on folks who are embedded in the community. Again, I started off by saying, I'm a member of the community as well. I'm impacted by this well. And you said it so eloquently. This virus doesn't care who you are and what path you've taken in life. And I've talked to some of those folks on the phone who are well-to-do, who now are really in a pickle. They don't have any resources and they live in nice zip codes, quote, the nicer zip codes, unquote. And so then you can just imagine the folks who are just barely getting by. And so we really must continue to challenge and push hard against the status quo and speak up and have the courage, because nobody's going to get, this virus is just terrible. It's just putting everybody at risk. I don't know if I answered your question. I kind of rambled.
This is a discussion, and there's no answer.
My heart is full when I start talking about this, and I just, I'm just so fortunate to work with a team of dedicated folks who work for the county, but really do live in the communities and are actively involved with community. We can't do this alone. We need all the help we can get, and so does the community as well. Yeah, and trying to work through those bureaucratic systems can be frustrating at times. We're trying to fast track some of this stuff, and it's tough.
Well, actually, my comment goes to that point, and it's in Mr. Mack's question of how do we navigate this system and the stigma again associated with people who need assistance from time to time and things of that nature. Carlotta, when you were talking earlier, you were saying that in COVID, the county was able to kind of remove certain barriers. And a commentary on my part or a thought is some of those barriers probably could have been moved a long time ago. But once again, there's a prevailing thought that, okay, we're going to make it harder and harder for people to access the services that they need. And now when everyone needs the service, they say, you know what, we didn't need to make it really that hard. Let's knock out some of this, Eduardo, as you said, bureaucracy to streamline and get the help to the people.
Yeah, I honestly believe that we will not operate the same ongoing after COVID. I think that some of the things that we've implemented will stay in place. I know that we were trying to work on making things easier for the community prior to COVID, but as Eduardo mentioned, a lot of bureaucracy existed, and so we're the government. I mean, we have a lot of rules that we had to follow, but we were working on easing some of those rules. I don't know if you're aware, but I was a part of the group that started the Tenant Resource Center in North Minneapolis. And a part of that was a result of Hennepin County coming to the table with the community and discussing some of the barriers and getting ideas from community members of how we could make the process easier. As far as the stigma goes, I really hope that ongoing people will understand some of the things that people go through when they're in need. and maybe get rid of some areas, get rid of that stigma and be more understanding. I too live in the North Minneapolis community, and I think it's a wonderful community, and I have lived with that stigma that was created for years, and I've been always understanding that it existed and wished it hadn't.
And to
Yeah.
like just completely dismiss the stigma, I'm going to put it out there that as an adult, had to use medical assistance when I was here in Minnesota and had to rely on the county for different services. So it doesn't matter your lot in life per se. Sometimes people need help, and so I'm going to be personal enough to say that I was that person. So let's quit put, putting this stigma on people who rely on services from time to time. And trust me, there's going to be a lot more of I was that person following COVID-19.
How many
Yeah.
people gladly accepted the stimulus check, right?
Right.
How many folks that
Mhm.
stigmatize folks on public assistance are accepting the $600 increase for unemployment insurance, right? And so this virus is we will not work in the way that we did before. If we try to return back to those old ways, I can only speak for the county, we're going to have to provide a really good explanation as to why. Why are we re-erecting these barriers that we took down for this pandemic? But at the same time, we've got federal, there's a lot of money at stake, and this is all our money, taxpayer money. So we have to be really mindful of how we spread it. I just want to speak to my group. I'm with the Office of Multicultural Services. And so we've got staff from all the communities, immigrant, US born, Black, white, what have you, embedded in this team. And as Carlotta eloquently stated, we have to just continue to just work against this stigma, and we self-stigmatize ourselves as well. I've had calls from folks saying, I don't want to be judged, but so I'm going to cancel my SNAP benefits, my food stamp. And I'm like, hold on, let's take a big picture. What's going on in your life? What's happening with your job? How are you going to cover your bills next week? And people are resistant to that. Even if they know it's the right thing to do, it's to take help, they're resistant to it. So even within our own communities, and that's because of the peer pressure, the stigmatization.
Let me shout out to Nikki Hayes and Shonda Rochelle and Joseph Skinner and others who are monitoring this on Facebook and sending notes of applause and appreciation for this conversation. So you should know that people are paying attention, and we thank them. If you have questions or comments, Nikki or LaShonda or Joseph Skinner or others who are monitoring by Facebook, we want to hear your voice, get your ideas. We'd be glad to present them to the panelists here. And, let me go to Alicia to respond to the same question about, the other end of this is coming from the residents of the community. How do we get access to services we need without having to surrender dignity? At the end of the day, I'm a human being, period.
Yeah.
Period. I'm a human being. I live, and therefore, and so I count myself in the realm of every other human being on the planet, worthy, capable, a person with desire, and a person who can give and support, and whose presence makes a difference that can and should be positive. A person that is educable, right? That can be developed into being the best version of himself, herself, right? And so from the community point of view, Alicia, how do we lead with dignity and lead with that sense of equity so that our neighbors feel like and know that we are the owners of the enterprise of our existence, our government, our city, our county, et cetera? What do you think, Alicia?
Well, I think it's fairly simple. It starts with us. It starts literally the old adage of treat your neighbor how you want to be treated. And that means on your best and worst day. Excuse me. I know that sometimes in systems like the ones that we all work in and operate and live in, that there are reasons that people believe that we put these barriers in place to protect the system against people who may want to exploit them or whatever have you. One of the biggest things that I always tell people is that beggars can be choosy. You have a right to choice of how you're treated and how you're treated when you ask for something. Because when you have a lot and when you have a little, we all have pride. And no one wants to feel humiliated when they go and solicit some help or say, hey, I could really use a friend right now because I don't have any bread in my house. Could you borrow me some bread? It's just about humility. And we have to get away from this notion of me, I have to protect these dollars in which at some point everyone has contributed to the county, to the city, to the state, to the government. We all pay in some form or another into these systems. And it's only right that we should be able to go to them with dignity and be treated as human beings and not be met with the energy of, I'm coming to you, Mr. McFarlane, and said, give me $1,000 out of your pocket that you've worked hard for, just give it to me. But instead, people treat each other with dignity. And that's one of the things that we do here at Corcoran. Everything that we do is low barrier or no barrier. And it's done with discretion and dignity for folks. If you need something and you call me, I'm not telling the whole world, and I'm not going to report about it in a board meeting. I'm going to say we had the privilege of serving our community today, and whatever that looks like. And so we've created, myself and one of my neighbors here, we started a food shelf. Corcoran now has a food shelf, and it's accessible. And what we will do is you call me and you'll say, Alicia, hey, I have a need, or my neighbor has a need and she hasn't met you yet, or he hasn't met you yet, but here's what their family makeup is. I will drop a package discreetly on your porch and knock and leave. You never have to see me. You don't have to feel ashamed. And it is not in a shameful way. And if you can contribute later, when things have turned around from you, we absolutely appreciate that. But some things have to be done with dignity, and some folks still have a huge sense of pride. We all do, and it's fair. And so I think that those things are important. We also have a no barrier renters fund. It's not meant to get in the way. I don't need to know everything that you're doing with the money that you come. And so I think sometimes as organizations and entities, we feel entitled to know what people are doing with the resources that we're assisting them with. And we have to move away from that mentality of needing to know what Al McFarlane is doing with the $1,000 that we gave him. If you take the $1,000 that you said you needed to help supplement your rent for the month, and you decide that you also need food and your kids need, something else, then you do that because it helps solidify and provide a relief in your family. And so there's so many layers to what we're doing with. And I think COVID really just exposed, everyday Americans to what lots of communities of color have been navigating through, and navigating a lot of times with grace to say, well, I have to go and do this. I have folks that say, oh, I have to go to the county, but they feel shame about it. I have white families in my neighborhood who by all means assumed and lived a middle-class lifestyle and now are ashamed to reach out to the county for help because they don't want that stigma. And it's about saying, no, everyone needs a little help. How about I walk through some of these processes with you, and being met when you go to these agencies with people who care and sound concern on the phone and less judgment. And so I think we all have to remember nobody likes to be judged. And so if you carry that in your spirit, then it allows for you to really interact with folks at that basic human level.
Alicia, when you said something, this soliloquy, powerful, wonderful, beautiful, number one. The same is true of all of our guests on the program today. This is a great conversation. I feel it. And I almost felt teary-eyed when you said to me what I call the magic words, that people have to approach this work and approach neighbors saying, serving you is a privilege. thank you for the privilege of serving you.
Yeah.
And if we take that as the base motivation, that you have an opportunity and you understand that you are given the privilege to serve people, it changes everything. I think that is kind of the spirit I heard in Eduardo's comments, that this thing comes up from the community, and there is a place and there is a baseline that allows us to acknowledge and to lead with respecting dignity. We're about out of time, but I want to thank again everybody for listening. I want to take a minute though to bestow sort of a personal and family thanks to my colleague Harry Colbert. Harry Colbert, who's been the managing editor of Insight for the past 4 years, is going to be moving on after this Wednesday. He'll be joining the North News, a companion media property, an excellent newspaper in North Minneapolis, and he's accepted the position of editor-in-chief of North News. I think he begins probably a day after he leaves Insight News. And Harry, I want to say to you publicly and personally, thank you so much for what you've brought to Insight News, to my life and Batala and Bobby, the whole Insight News family. Thank you for the energy, the integrity, the intensity, and the professionalism that you bring to Insight News, the McFarlane Media organization, and that you bring to our profession of journalism and mass communications. And I can tell you and those listening that you will continue to be a great asset to our community. You'll provide leadership and knowledge that will advance the important work of North News. North News is an important medium, and this conversation is intended in part to demonstrate, to model how transitions are positive things, and that Insight is strengthened and North News is strengthened by Harry Colbert's movement from here to there. We never leave each other. We keep working together, and that's what I want to say to you, Harry. And I want to say, brother, thank you, thank you, thank you.
Congrats, Harry.
Thank you. And now I'm almost moved to tears.
Hold it together. Hold it together.
Insight News, yeah, it's been 10 years that I've been with Insight News, first as a reporter and then the last 4 years as managing editor. And it has been the most beautiful and powerful experience, as you said, serving the community, and also learning from truly the best. Your wisdom, Mr. Mack, your leadership, your foresight is just something that I pick from a little bit at a time every day. And I'm thankful to you, to Batala, to Mrs. Mack, Patricia, Sonny, the entire Kelvin, the entire staff at Insight News. Insight it was here long before I moved to Minnesota, and it's established itself as the premier media outlet for telling our story. And when I'm saying our story, I'm being very specific, saying Black Americans in Minnesota in the Twin Cities. And it's provided me with so many opportunities through Insight. Obviously, it's given me the growth opportunity to move on to North News, but just opportunities to interact with the governor, senators, the president of the United States, Barack Obama, and Michelle Obama, and all these other things. But more importantly, it gave me the opportunity to interact with the community. When we lost Brother Jamar Clark and when we lost Philando, Insight was there to tell that story and to hold people accountable. And so I appreciate everything that Insight has done for me and everything it continues to do for the community. So I'm excited about the transition. I do give myself 2 days off, so I'll start next Monday. But Insight is always family, and I love you all dearly.
And so what will happen is that we'll just stay connected, and there's no reason we can't work organization to organization, continuing
Absolutely.
these conversations. That's how we should do it.
Nice.
And so my position is let's model what should be as we advance the interests of our families, our communities into the future. I want to take one more minute to, again, present a spirit of praise and positivity to Carlotta Madison and to Eduardo Parra, to both of you representing the hundreds, perhaps thousands of first responders in Minnesota and public servants in Minnesota and around the country. I think that too often we take you for granted and take your work for granted, and we don't hear and feel the personal passion that you bring to serving the community every day. So I want to take a minute to say thank you. And I'm speaking on my own behalf, but also on behalf of all the readers of Insight News and people that are connecting with us on Facebook and on YouTube and our other media platforms. And finally, I want to say the same thing to Sister Smith, Alicia Smith. You are doing phenomenal work and providing exceptional leadership on the front line in the neighborhood. So I want to close with those words of praise to all of you, to encourage you to keep doing what you're doing, just do more and model it in a way that your light shines a path and it provides an example for other people to feel the sense of equity, a sense of ownership, a sense that we, in fact, are shaping the world, that we are creating the future. We are co-creators and responsible and accountable to each other. So thank you all so very much.
And before we close out, because I was monitoring a side chat, Eduardo, you have a website that you can offer for residents.
Right. So I posted on the chat portion. I'm not sure where that ends up on your end, but there, if you go to Google and search Hennepin County COVID-19, you'll be directed to the county's main COVID-19 community resources response page. There are links for other languages as well, but you can go online and seek resources on your own. But if you need a little help or you just aren't sure what your next steps are, call us at 612-348-3000. Sunday through Saturday, 7 days a week, 8 a.m. to 8 p.m. 348-3000. You might have to wait a little bit because we're busy, but we will get you on the phone and we'll figure out what the next steps are with your direction and your leadership, because remember, it's our own personal lives. We have the rights to make our own decisions and to set our own path forward. We're humans serving humans. That's the way I like to say it. Humans helping other humans. So we're going to bring a heavy dose of humanity to those conversations, compassion, humility, sympathy when needed, and also positivity, that we are here to help you. Do not worry. Somebody's got your back. And I've said that so many times to folks laid off, diagnosed with cancer, just really having a tough time, and say, do not worry. We are here for you. We live in the community as well. And that's a very profound thing to be able to offer and to be able to have the privilege of just being where I'm at. So it's a gift that keeps giving over and over and over.
I want to shout out a colleague of yours as well, Kelsey Dawson Walton,
yes.
I think, for helping organize. So Kelsey and I have talked online, and she and I go back a ways, but we also were reconnected with with Al Flowers at Underground Strategies. And one of the things that we're going to do is work with Kelsey's help to connect with this multi-jurisdictional group of organizations, agencies, and counties, in cities, in different departments, so that over the next several weeks, maybe the next several months, we can keep bringing conversations like this forward. I want to say to Carlotta and Eduardo, I want to have both of you back on sooner than later, because what I'm famous for, let me tell you this, is the personal story. And I didn't get a chance to ask you your personal stories because there's so much that we can do in 1 hour. But I know that when I get a chance to ask you, Carlotta, about where you're from and who's your mom and who's your dad, who your grandparents. When I ask you that, Eduardo, I'm going to get so much information that's going to remind me of people and parts of my life. So we're going to connect.
I would be delighted.
Power of sharing stories. And
Okay.
we're going to do that. And hopefully you guys will be okay with doing that again.
Oh, sure, certainly.
And I
Okay.
also
Definitely. Yeah.
Now that I figured Zoom out, I can jump right in right at the get-go.
And I've asked Alicia to take on the role of working to organize other members of the NRP Block Club movement, because we think that's a critical layer of engagement. It's micro engagement. It's ground level. It's neighborhood. That's where the rubber meets the road. So Alicia, I'm going to be calling on you for your help in getting your colleagues to be here regularly, somebody every week, so that we can keep the proposition of neighborhood power front and center.
I also want to acknowledge on our Facebook page, the Insight News Facebook page, many people have been monitoring there and acknowledge the participation of school board member Carrie Jo Felder, and one of the true treasures of our community, Walter Q. Bear Banks Jr., who's listening in as well.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah, one of the legends who has his own day named after him. So we want to acknowledge you, brother.
Okay, well, great. So my last word is to invite people to also tune in tomorrow, the regular broadcast of Conversations with Al McFarlane on KFAI. It's at 1 o'clock, and we're using this technology. We're marrying broadcast radio and social media, so we'll be streaming live to Facebook, YouTube, other platforms as we talk on the radio. And tomorrow's program is an international program. We're going to start using the KFAI session to have a diaspora focus, reaching out to people in the Caribbean, in South America. Eventually, I'm setting in place a way to connect with people around COVID-19 in England. It might take a few weeks to get it operational, but that's the direction. How do we use an awareness and a discussion of the impact of COVID-19 to look at how we handle things in neighborhoods and in communities and in families around the world. So join me tomorrow at 1 o'clock, KFAI 90.3 FM, and right here on Facebook as well. We'll see you all. Take care. Thank you so much. I'm Al McFarlane.
Thank you, guys. Thank you.
All right. Thank you.
Thank you.
Kelvin, thank you. We'll see you later.